1,000 years before the birth of this child, in the little town of Bethlehem, a son was born to Jesse, who would be anointed King of Israel. And to David was made the promise that there would be an heir from the Davidic line, one of his descendants, that would hold the throne forever. 700 years before the birth of this child, the kingdom is divided between the north and the south. And the prophet Isaiah proclaims our first reading today. He proclaims that a king will rise up who will unite the people, that there will be no more war, and his name will be Wonder Counselor, God Hero, Father forever, Prince of Peace. And yet, 500 years before the birth of this child, the southern tribe would fall to the Babylonians. And any remnant of the Davidic line seemed to be lost. And so when the angel proclaims to shepherds in our gospel tonight that a child has been born in the city of David, their hopes are sparked. And they realize that the long, seemingly lost promise of God is being fulfilled in their midst. That it is a time to rejoice. For today is born to us a Savior, Christ the Lord. Loaded words there. Christ, the Greek word for the Hebrew word Messiah, meaning the anointed one, the descendant of David, the anointed king that was long awaited. And the word Messiah and Christ, as we heard last weekend, the word Christ, Christos, in Luke's gospel is a loaded word because it is the Greek word that the Hebrew people used when they were translating their sacred scriptures from the Hebrew into the Septuagint, the Greek. They used the word Kyrios, Lord. Every time they came across the word in the Old Testament, YHWH. Of course, we don't know exactly how to pronounce this word, but we pronounce it Yahweh, the name of God. I am who am. And so if you go to a Greek translation of the Old Testament, you will see the word Kyrios over and over and over again. It is a word that means both king and Lord. And so the angel is announcing that not only has the promise to David been fulfilled, but the promise of Isaiah that there would be one Emmanuel, God with us, that God would come to lead us. And tonight we celebrate that on the throne of David is the Son of God who will rule forever. Savior. A gift given to us. That's why we give gifts. Because we've received the greatest gift. Little story. Early in my priesthood, many years ago, I was preparing a couple for marriage. It's nobody here, so don't look around you, okay? This is many years ago. And we were getting together in my office about a week after Christmas. And they came into my office, and the bride-to-be was sitting there with her arms folded. And she wasn't talking. She was upset. She was really upset. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she looked up, well, she didn't even look at me. She just says, "You wouldn't believe what he got me for Christmas." I said, what did he get you for Christmas? She said, "He got me a clothes hamper and cleaning supplies." Guys, if you're preparing for marriage, do not get your bride-to-be a clothes hamper or cleaning supplies. It is not romantic, not even in the least. I don't care how much she needs it, how messy her apartment is. Don't do it. People often get priests homiletic aids, things to help us to prepare our homilies, which is great. We usually take that pretty well. And I mean, I know that when I was newly ordained, I really appreciated getting as much of that stuff as I can. But don't get Deacon Josh or myself the dummy's guide to preparing a homily so your people don't fall asleep, okay? Just don't do it. We might take offense, right? Maybe a little bit, huh? That's the kind of book we should get ourselves, okay? So there are some good Christmas gifts, and there's some. No, it's not just, that it should be an extravagant gift or something like that. I mean, like, very ordinary gifts, things that we need sometimes can be very touching. For example, I can remember whenever I was in about 6th grade, going to my mom's parents' home for Christmas. And the big gift that year, and this was rare, was a gift that my grandfather got my grandmother. Pap got Grandma this huge box and had this big bow on it. And so we were all excited to see what Grandpap got Grandma. And as she was opening it, it turned out that it was a dishwasher. Now, when you're in 6th grade, you think, it's not a toy. You can't play with it. Seems kind of boring. But my grandmother cried. I can remember she cried. Why did she cry? Well, she cried because they were poor. They spent all their money on their grandkids. It took a lot for Grandpap to sacrifice and to gather up enough money to get his wife a dishwasher. I mean, it was one of these these funny dishwashers. Because they didn't have a place in the kitchen to put it. So it was on wheels. And so you wheeled this dishwasher in out of the closet, and it connected to the sink faucet. Do you remember these old dishwashers? Grandma cried that he cared so much about her that he would get her a dishwasher. I can remember many years later, I was later in college, maybe even the beginning of my seminary training, going to the same grandparents' house. And again, it was like, this is rare. The big present was Grandpap's gift to Grandma. And we all had to pay a lot of attention. We'd open presents, Grandpap wanted us all to be very focused. And Grandma opened this little box, and inside was a diamond ring. He always wanted her to have a diamond. See, when they got engaged, they were just in high school. And he passed on a scholarship to go to Slippery Rock to get married because his family, they all went to the coal mines. And so that was pretty much what he thought his life would be. And so he asked Grandma to marry, and he couldn't afford an engagement ring with a diamond in it. It was a ring that had kind of like this sparkly stuff on it. It was like metal that was kind of shined up a little bit, but there was no rock there. Now, that was perfectly fine for Grandma. Grandma didn't want a diamond ring. But Grandpap always wanted her to have one. Now, no doubt, Grandma did cry again. But my grandfather, who was this really tough Slovak, my grandfather was one of these guys, he would stand really tall so you couldn't give him a kiss. He'd lift his chin a little higher than you could reach when you were a little kid. He was tough. My grandfather cried giving her the diamond ring. It wasn't a big ring. It was a diamond ring. This holiday, as people make sacrifices, big and small, this holiday is an opportunity for us to mirror the very love of God. That's what the gift giving is all about. It's all about the gift of ourselves. Because make no mistake about it, no greater gift has ever been given than the gift of the Son of God, who emptied himself of his divinity, embracing our humanity, so that we might share in his divinity. He became flesh. He took on our nature so that we could share in his nature. He came into this world so that we might see the human face of God. You ever wonder what God looks like? It's the face of Jesus Christ. That's what God looks like. It's the face of one who would hold nothing back from you, who would lay down his life for you, who would allow people to beat him and mock him for you. The Bible begins telling us that you and I, we were created in God's image. Did you ever wonder what that is? This mystery unfolds that as well. Not only is Jesus the human face of God, but Jesus is the divine face of man. Jesus shows us our divinity. He shows us what we were created to be. We were created to be children of God, like Jesus Christ. We were created to give our lives to the Father and to receive, like little children, all the gifts that the Father wants to give to us. This is what Jesus shows us. He doesn't just show us, he makes it possible. How does he make it possible? By giving himself to us. By wedding us. It's the mystery of marriage. When St. Paul says that marriage is a great mystery, he goes on to say, and I'm talking about Christ and the church. He's talking about the great mystery that when a husband and wife become one, they begin to become like each other. By the end of his life, my grandfather was crying as much as my grandmother was crying. He became like her. He got the soft heart that my grandmother had. The same happens to us. We come year after year down this aisle to receive the body and blood of Christ so that we might be conformed to our beloved, so that we might become like our spouse, Jesus Christ. God came into the world to wed us, to become one with us, so that we might become one with him. He makes it possible for us to be able to say with St. Paul, it is no longer I who live, but it is Christ who lives within me. This is the good news. This is the Savior that we celebrate today. That God doesn't leave us wallowing in our sinfulness. That God doesn't leave us in the midst of the darkness. He doesn't leave us lost, but he came into this world to seek us out like a shepherd seeks out the lost sheep. He's come into this world to wed us, to become one with us, so that we might become one with him. This is the path of holiness. This is why we come here week after week, to grow in conformity to Christ. You see, Christmas is all about Christ's Mass. Because at every Christ's Mass, we become one with the one who took on our nature so that we might shine in his divinity forever. The prophets have been fulfilled. Salvation is ours Tonight we celebrate the birth of our Savior. Let us rejoice and be glad. Let us receive him. Let us wallow in his love, in his glory. Let us be conformed to him. Let us become one with him. Let us give him glory. Merry Christmas.